tonight is all about stress and stopping the stress cycle. So I'm bringing in some really good strategies and techniques for you. I am glad that you are here, and so I've been doing some studying and looking at some different resources than I've shared before. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. So let's move on to our next slide. Thank you to Viatris for their sponsorship, and thank you to MS Views and News. This will never get old, and I'll always continue to say thank you because I have so much gratitude for their sponsorship of this program and for the ability for us to build the community that we have over these past several years. So thank you to Viatris, our sponsor for tonight's program. So introductions. If you don't know me, my name is Jessica Thomas. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I am also a mental health therapist, and I also am a director of patient education for the Neuroendocrine Tumor Research Foundation. So I live with MS. I've been living with MS. This year will be 19 years. My husband and I have been married for 20 years this year. 18 of those years, I've been helping people that are living with chronic disease and progressive disease. And 17 is the number of years that my son turns this year. So you can learn a little bit about my story just from those basic numbers. But I came into this journey after my own diagnosis and have been very passionate about helping people with the emotional aspects of disease, because often we don't experience physical disease without some emotional indications or effects. So I put this slide here because I talk so much about stress and how it's not good for MS, but then I felt like I couldn't do a program about stress and stress management without continuing to tell you that stress is not good for MS. And this is so tricky because stress is inevitable, right? I mean, it's happening all around us all the time. There's all these different types of stress. There's positive stress. There is chronic stress. There is negative stress. There can be lots of different stress, but stress is not good for your MS. But we can't prevent stress from happening, right? We can maybe adjust, adapt, and accept some of the things around us, but we can't stop stress from being present. And so I just wanted to make a mention to say that we're not going to be able to get rid of all the stress. And if I could, I'd probably be a millionaire because that would be amazing if I could get rid of all the stress for everybody. But I can't. But what we can do here is that we can learn some coping tools. We can learn some strategies, and we can help with the emotional wellness side of MS. And that's an area that you have control to help you as you're managing through a stressor. So we're going to move forward. And we have Linda who said, growing up, my mom always said, your stress will get you one day. I think she was right. So I do believe, so in theme of that, there is a book, I'm failing on the author's name, but it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And I think that's very true. Stress is the physical and mental response to an internal trigger. So if you think about it, stress is how we hold our stress, how our stress can kind of stay in our bodies. And it's really a response, and it can stay in our brains, and it can create anxiety. Stress isn't just an emotion you feel. Really, there is the stressor over here, and then there's the stress. And so the stressor is the thing that caused the stress, but the stress is what happens to your body. And when you experience a external stressor, it triggers a lot of complex reactions in your body. And this essentially is called the stress response cycle. And the stress response cycle is essentially, and I'll go through some of the exact things that happen, but it's just the cycle is natural, and it kind of just is something that automatically happens, and it should only last for kind of a short period of time, and then you should be back to, like, I don't know, business as usual. And but if you never deal with the stress fully, if you never give yourself time to recover or to cope, the cycle can kind of persist and continue, and then that becomes like a chronic stress, and it can become kind of an indefinitely thing. Um, so I'm sharing things, tools, ways that you have control. Because if we have a lot of chronic stress in our body, it's an increase in inflammation in our body, and that's not good for our immune system. I know from my own personal experience, and I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but I know many people have because I've talked with many people over the years. But have you ever had a very stressful period in your life and had a relapse really close to it? And that is something that can be very common. So we're focusing this on MS and relapses, but also you can, with prolonged stress, you can have cardiovascular issues, you can have anxiety or depression, you can have diabetes, obesity, immune system problems. But I know with MS, there's a direct correlation that stress isn't good. And for me, I've had positive stress where I was in graduate school, all these great things were happening in my life, and I had so much on my plate. I was diagnosed with MS. But then years later, I had a lot of other things going on in my life, another series of positive stressors, things I enjoyed, but I was doing too much and I had another relapse. So it's just important to know that even positive stress can cause weight and be hard. You know, I told someone the other day, and I think that it resonated with the person as well as it did me to hear it again, is you can do too many good things. So while we can have too many tasks and things that we want to do in our lives, we can also do too many good things and be overwhelmed by them, or have too much good stress. So there is such thing as doing too much of anything. So we have Katrina on here that says, yes, even relapsed during good stress and had to stop the good stress. But it is what it is, and glad I recognized it. Yeah, back then, my own experience, I saw the advice from someone who had been living with MS for a long time, much longer than me, and she said sometimes MS has its way of tapping you on the shoulder, and I'll never forget that because that was the time I was doing a lot of great fun stuff and helpful and amazing things, but my MS was tapping me on the shoulder, telling me to slow down. It's too much positive stress, but also negative stress can have the same thing. So let's move on to our next slide, and I have some questions for you. So these are two separate questions. So please you can try to answer them separately. But I might be able to read and code if typing is hard. What are some of your visible signs of stress? And what are some of your invisible signs? And I'll give you my examples because, one, I love to share that I'm human, and no matter being a helper for people, I am someone who experiences stress too. And we all have visible signs and we all have invisible signs. So I would say my visible signs are pretty good in control, unless if I'm too stressed, I might be kind of short or kind of grumpy. And that would come with not being rested. But an invisible sign of my stress, that something that nobody sees, that I only see when I have recently went to the dentist, is that I am clenching my mouth a lot. And I'm doing that when I'm focusing, when I'm really trying to concentrate. And or if I'm just really, when we talk about the stress cycle, explain it, when I really have a reaction to stress, I'm tending to clench, and that's not good for my teeth. So that's an invisible, a sign that nobody knew until my dentist talked to me. So Kanita says irritability. So that is that definitely can be a visible sign where other people notice you're irritable. It also can be invisible because you can feel irritable and then nobody sort of knows that you're feeling that way. Linda says visible, my voice gets louder, so probably a little bit of that shortness, right? Invisible, I get anxious and fatigued. Absolutely. And so for Joe, he says when I shut down, so that's some of his visible signs. He kind of shuts down, and an invisible sign is that he stops talking. So we all have signs of stress. And over the past couple years, I've talked and I've shared how important it is to know exactly what your signs of stress are, because we have the visible signs that usually will come first before the invisible signs. But sometimes the invisible start first and then you see the visible. Um, Shelley says visible, I eat at night. I can identify with that, Shelley. That's something sometimes that can happen too. Katrina says feeling overwhelmed, the body shuts down, fatigue, or the visible would be leg weakness, tingling, and spasticity increases. Um, David says visible signs of stress. You can see in his walking, and then the invisible sign you can see in the cognition. So absolutely. So you can see how stress kind of impacts us, our whole body, and it's crazy how much of a hold it can have on us, and the body keeps a score, and so what can we do, when stress is around us and it's always going to be here? So let's talk a little bit about what the stress cycle is. So we'll move on to our next slide, and you guys can keep writing in. We have John that says anxiety would be a invisible, and then insomnia would be a visible because he wakes up early. And then Linda says, why does it take so long for our nervous system to calm down after a stress attack? Well, we're going to actually do a couple, and I'm going to share some micro resources for you at the end, because there are ways that we can kind of do some quick things. Now, for big stressors, we might not be able to apply it right away. And if we've had a lot of chronic stress and bad coping mechanisms or poor coping mechanisms, then it may take us a while to learn the things that can calm us. And that's why it's important to kind of know what your stress signs are, because if you know what your stress signs are, then those are the things that are going to tap you, on the shoulder and say, okay, I'm clenching my teeth. This is, I'm really stressed out, or feeling kind of irritable or annoyed. What should I do? So what is a stress cycle? So the stress cycle essentially is your body's natural response to stress. And there's 3 stages. I'm going to talk about them more in depth, but there is alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. And so learning how to kind of work through each stage is really important. And we're going to kind of talk a little bit about how to break through also that cycle, because if we don't break through it, we don't kind of close that loop, if that makes sense. If we only just do those 3 things over and over again, then we're going to be in the same place where we started. So for alarm, so we'll move on to our next slide. So when you happen upon a stressor, it could be a danger, a deadline. Your body's natural reaction is to go into survival mode. And that seems kind of dramatic, but I'll give you some more kind of toned down examples. And this is the alarm stage. So the alarm stage is characterized by fight or flight response. And this is where you have some physiological changes in your body, and your body releases more cortisol and adrenaline, and your heart rate can pick up as well. And so let me give you a toned down version. So say that I want to use the stressor with working with getting a access to a handicapped spot. For the person that shared that. I'm sorry, I know it's a good little bit up, so I don't want to scroll to find it. But say that you filled out the paperwork, and then you get something in the mail that didn't recognize your disease, or you talk to someone at work and they don't, that your disease is kind of invisible, they don't understand it. Or if they don't support it, that can, or if you have to do another thing, like take a form to your doctor, that might cause a little bit of a sense of alarm. Or if you are, say that somebody calls you and they want you to do something at the last minute, and that can cause a sense of alarm. Sometimes, that for me in the work environment, that can happen a little bit. So your body reacts to it, right? And so it may be that I wanted to focus on this because I need to focus. That's really important for me and my brain and how I work, and I'm at my best when I'm more focused. But if I have lots of things kind of toggling in, it makes it really hard. And so you get that kind of feeling like that's when you know. Back in the day, you know, when we were cavemen, it was different. The things that were ahead of you or in front of you to cause that sense of alarm were a little bit different. But I'm just talking about regular, everyday stressors. And so when you have an increase in cortisol, and this is going to increase your blood sugar levels, and it provides energy to the muscles, but it also suppresses your digestion. It's crazy. Our bodies have just this natural way that we cope with stress. And then you have adrenaline that kicks in, and this increases your heart rate, your breathing, and blood pressure. So basically you're kind of ready to go, like either to deal with it or fight or flight is kind of where you enter. And it doesn't have to be very dramatic this period of time, but it is like that. So we have Kanita said, for her visible stuff, the intention tremor gets worse and she drops more things. Thank you, Kanita, for sharing. Linda says, is that like fight or flight? Absolutely like fight or flight. And then Kenyatta says, dropping things annoys others. Both dropping and annoying are stressful. Absolutely. And then John says, I think stress had a lot to do with my body being so run down from the flu and personal stress. And then I started dragging my leg, my first MS symptom. How awful. And the truth is, our immune system is really related to stress, and I don't want you to blame that stress caused this, because we don't know if stress caused it. Same with the times that I had relapses around times that I had a lot going on. I think stress was a contributor by far, but this is what we do know is that stress can knock your immune system, and we also need a good immune system. So if we don't have a good immune system, we're more going to be more capable of picking up something like the flu or another sickness. And then absolutely people can see with stress, as it's inflammatory, that people might see that sometimes their MS symptoms get worse. And sometimes MS symptoms just get worse because they get worse. But sometimes we can say, you know what, my MS or my stress level has been really bad. I've had a lot going on. What can I do? And I think this is good practice for us every day to figure out, how can I close the stress cycle? So we're going to learn that a little bit more. But next, let's talk about resistance. So once the initial threat resides, your parasympathetic nervous system is going to reduce your stress response. So your cortisol levels and blood pressure are going to drop a little bit, and your heart rate's going to normalize. You're starting to kind of, just feel a little bit more calm. And although your body begins to recover, it remains sort of on alert until the stressor is no longer an issue. So you might feel a sense of relax, but in the background, there's going to be a little bit of friction for your body, a little bit of inflammation. But if it's a chronic stressor, this is important to know, like say like a job or like a job that's way demanding, or unhealthy relationship, or financial tensions that are ongoing all the time, your body might kind of remain in that heightened state, and those stress hormones remain high, and then your body will try to make adjustments to cope with the stress. And this is where we often will see like poor sleep, irritability. We might see the inability to concentrate, some of the normal things that you've been able to do that you cannot do. So we're going to move on to exhaustion. So the next slide is exhaustion, if you don't complete the cycle. So if you don't complete the stress cycle, then the body kind of stays and repeats in that stress response. And this can lead to prolonged and chronic stress, and then it can lead to long-term health issues. Like we had mentioned, anxiety or depression for mental health. I know chronic stress affects my husband. Sometimes he'll get an ulcer, and he's not a very stressed out person, but if it stress is really bad, he'll get an ulcer. And or mental burnout, fatigue, physical fatigue, emotional fatigue. So the key here is to identify, how can you work with healthy coping to close out the stress cycle in the day. And I love this concept because this is what we can control. And having aspects of what we can control within a disease we can't control is pretty magical. So, and in a life that often we can't control things, we can figure out how to complete the stress cycle. So we'll move on to our next slide. And we'll talk about this. So I put a picture of a wave here, and I thought it was pretty helpful to think about, is that stress is going to be like waves that comes and it goes. And while we can just ride the wave of stress, and it really does take a lot of toll on our body. So we know that stress is going to constantly kind of come into our lives and our day and our week, etc. Then what can we do to complete the stress cycle? Because the next wave will come, and it will be there as well. So we'll move on to our and make sure I didn't. Yeah, that's Charlie. Do you guys remember Charlie from last month if you're on here? So the first thing that we can do, there are some tips, some things that you can do that can help you kind of break through the stress cycle. Sleep is the first one, but I actually should have put this as probably one of the last ones. Sleeping is critical to stress management, but it's critical to your health. It's critical for your mental health, etc. We have, I'm going to stop for a second and read. We have Shelley, who said, "This is interesting, not for me, but for my daughter. She suffers from anxiety and is always tired. I'm thinking now she has not completed her stress cycle." This is something that could help everybody. And to be honest, if you take a lot of value out of tonight's program, share the recording with someone that you care about. This is a topic that I think can go for many people, regardless of MS, and anybody can use these tips. So one of the first things that we can lose is our ability to sleep when we're stressed out. I think about COVID during that period of time in my life, and I remember that one of my signs of not, being just too stressed out was that I wasn't sleeping well. And sleep is incredibly important. It's an important part of managing stress. When you're well rested, you're able to handle stressful situations more. We had a couple of people, including me, who said they can be a little bit short if they're not well rested. But you can handle stress so much better. You're more emotionally resilient. But then also stress can kind of be restorative for the body, so it can help reduce the physical effects of stress, like inflammation. And so here is, a picture of Charlie. I know he's super cute, but he reminds me in this picture probably what a lot of people are like at night, trying to go to sleep and cannot go to sleep, trying to go to sleep but can't. And so in terms of sleep hygiene, there are, there are practical things that you can do to help. If you are struggling with sleep, I want you to talk with your doctor about it. If you are struggling to sleep because of stress, one, identifying it would be, really helpful for you. But then beyond that, it may be helpful to to talk to a counselor to help with the stress or help with coping mechanisms, or even just to help with sleep hygiene and building a good sleep plan. I know for me, and I'll just share this, during COVID, during that time where my sleep was not that good, I developed a evening routine and a sleep hygiene routine. And that routine really did help me. And so now every evening I'm in my bed around 9 o'clock. And the reason why is the TV's not on, the other noise, the other things. And so that's how I start. It's not how I start, but it's kind of how I close out my stress cycle too, is that I play a couple games, I'll read a book, I'll do some other things to kind of just end the day on a different note. Because if I left just from the TV to bed, I wouldn't have a transition. So the next slide, and we'll go to, we'll change the slides, is on releasing emotions. It is critical for us to learn ways to to let out our emotions in a healthy way. When you keep everything bottled up, it can lead to unhealthy coping. And sometimes that might, be eased with, overeating or drinking alcohol or, like lashing out. So finding an outlet, finding a way to release emotions that work for you. So I don't have a slide here yet. I don't think I have one coming up that talks about this. But I would like to ask you, like, what are your creative outlets? So we have Linda that does singing. Dion, I don't know if she's on here, but I know she loved music. Maddie, that used to be on here a lot, liked music as well. What are some of your creative outlets? Is it, painting or writing, cooking? Is it taking a walk? Joe says, write it out, then burn it. I'll give you a really great example of that in a second. That's a really good example. Helen says sewing and cooking. Those are great. So let me know what your creative outlets are so we can kind of inspire each other. So Katie says watching comedies. That is really a great way to release emotions too. So write it out, then burn it. So I'm going to go back to this COVID example, this period of time where stress was really high and I didn't know what to do with all the stress I was experiencing around me. And so, and Katrina says journal, but could use some more ideas. Perfect. So during this period of time, one of the things that I did is we have a small chimenea, and at the end of every day, at the end of a lot of therapy sessions, I just saw people back to back for at least 8 or 9 hours sometimes. I would go to my chimenea after I was finished with my notes, and I would burn everything that I hand wrote because I handwrite things. That's just the nature of me. And when I was watching the fire, I never had wood in the chimney, so I only had these little papers, but I would watch the fire go up and go down, and I would sit and just watch it, and I would give it a blessing for everybody for that shared everything with me that they did for that day. And then I also just had a moment of peace for myself before I went in, and that's how I closed out my day. It was a really beautiful and helpful period of time, but burning it. So write it and burn it. If you want, write it, tear it up. David says meditation exercises, and then Eric says pick up my guitar and improvise playing the blues. Those are really great things to do. And so finding ways to release those emotions are really important, and developing a routine if you can. I think every day, it doesn't have to be super hard or strict, but every day do something. I know during COVID, I did that chimenea burning thing for every day during COVID until it kind of phased out, and then I've moved on to other coping mechanisms. But finding what works for you. So we're going to move on to our next slide, and you're going to see a volcano. So the reason why I put the volcano there, because we want to release emotions, because if we do not release emotions, this is what happens. So if you think about the middle of the volcano, where all the lava is, what happens is, we have, don't quote me here, but I'm not a scientist, but we have volcanoes, all over the world that have not erupted in many, many years. And what keeps them from not erupting? Well, essentially, it's the venting. And so when you have a volcano that erupts, it's because it has a lot of pressure behind it. And so what I have used this example and this analogy for people is that we need to have little vents, little things to do to take care of ourselves every single day, so we can let some of that pressure down, that we kind of stop that stress cycle a little bit, where it's not as intense, it's not as furious, and that can help you from exploding, literally, or just really having overwhelmed, uncontrolled stress. So think about that volcano and think about what are those things that I can do that vents out, that allows to take the pressure off and allows me to feel better. And thinking about some of the creative things that you do every day as well. So we're going to move on to our next strategy, which is setting limits. So one of the things that you can do is, if you are overwhelmed, if you're feeling super stressed, get a pen and paper and make a list of the top priorities. And then you say no to things that don't fall into those. And so this would help you to focus on what's important and taking on too much. And this can be really helpful. I know as a strategy for people that when I was doing therapy and I specialized in chronic disease, there a lot of times the people I worked with, worked sometimes part-time, some people worked full-time, but some people didn't work at all. And the people that didn't work at all often had people in their lives that would just ask them and pile up on things to do because they thought they had nothing to do when really they had their selves to take care of. And so we worked on setting limits and setting boundaries. So if you're feeling, at the end of the day, stressed, kind of figuring out, okay, what's going on, what is necessary, what's a priority, and what's not, and finding your limits and putting yourself first. Because if you are not able to take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to be as much good at helping other people. So another strategy we're going to move on to is deep breathing. So this is not quite the micro practice, Linda, that I've mentioned, but I'll share one of those in a minute. But whenever you're feeling stressed, your breathing becomes more shallow and rapid. That's naturally what happens to your body, and it's because your breathing is a response to stress, and it activates your sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for that fight or flight response. But with your breathing alone, you can reset and you can help to calm your parasympathetic system, your vagal nerve. So I'm going to talk about two different types of breathing. The first breathing is, and you may have heard me mention these before, but the very first breathing is box breathing. I call it box breathing or square breathing. And I learned it was also called tactical breathing because these are a breath pattern that they teach soldiers in the military. And I always say if that's really good for soldiers in the military at war to learn, then there's some value in that because they're in the most intense, stressful of situations. But for box breathing, it's relatively simple, and if you can imagine a box. So you would breathe in for a count of 4, and then you would hold it for a count of 4. Then you would exhale for a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 4, then inhale for a count of 4, and then hold it for a count of 4. So you ultimately end up drawing a box. The other type of breathing that can be helpful is the 1 to 2 breathing. So this is where your exhale is twice as long as your inhale. So you will breathe in, maybe for a count of 3, and then exhale for a count of 6. Or you might breathe in for a count of 4, and your exhale is for a count of 8. I know that breathing exercise is really the most helpful for me, that and box breathing, but primarily the 1 to 2 breathing. And the one thing I love about it is that you can do it and nobody knows that you're doing it. And in moments of great stress, when I have a lot on my plate, what I'm doing for work, and then I have a presentation that I have to do for work as well, I usually, before it's time for my presentation, because I'm managing all the other aspects, is I sit down and I just do that breathing for a little bit, and that helps to center me. I would love for you to try it, and I hope that you will try it after the program as well. We're going to move on to our micro practices. So micro practices are like a gift. So why does it take so long for your body to feel calm? Breathing is one of the best things you can do to kind of recenter yourself and to lessen anxiety and to refocus and ground yourself. But micro practices can be small things that you do and as short as 20 seconds long. And there's two different types of micro practices that we're going to do today. But I want you to think when you're feeling overwhelmed and help, and you need something to help you kind of just stay calm and focused, that this is something that you can do. And one of the variations we're going to do is a self-compassion micro practice. I want you to know that you can do these things in 20 seconds or less, or a minute or less. And this is really important for you to know, because sometimes we feel like, well, I can't do that. I don't have time. I've got to go run to this next thing or this next thing. And if we give ourselves the moment 20 seconds. We've got 20 seconds. We can stop for 20 seconds. We can stop for a minute. And we could build these into our everyday practice. And that could help you a bunch. So the first micro practice that we're going to do, and we're actually going to do this one, is a compassionate micro practice for self-compassion. So we'll move on to our next slide. And so for this, I want you to think about this, that this is, accessible, affordable, and it's easy, and you can find it. It's easy to find and it's easy to do. All you need is yourself. And really you need yourself to not criticize yourself too. So you need the openness of that. But I want you to take your hand and I want you to place it over your heart. And then I want you to take your other hand and place it over your belly. So it's almost like, I'll stand up. It's almost like you're giving yourself a hug. We had talked about in the past, there are some other positions like you can do it like this, but we're going to do the one from the example. So a hand over the heart and one over your tummy. And when you're feeling a strong sense of anxiety, this can be a calming thing to do. Now I want you to slowly take a deep breath. And I want you to feel the connection of your breath and your body. I want you to focus on the warm sensation of your hands. And then I want you to take a deep sigh out and notice the movement, the sound, the temperature, and the sensations, what you're feeling. And now that you've maybe do 1 or 2 cycles of that breathing, I want you to think of some thoughts of affirmation. So I'm going to read some examples from the article that I had found. I give myself room and comfort. I feel the warmth I can offer myself. I will be patient and kind to myself. I now take time to honor who I am. Nobody is perfect, so I forgive myself. I am gentle and understanding with myself. I am free to make my decisions that work for me. I do not have to be perfect. So we can release out of that, but you could see that that's a lovely thing that you could do, a small gift to yourself, that you could give yourself messages that you really need to hear, and at the same time you're working on your breathing and being self-compassionate, because that is something that we lack often. So we're going to move on to our next, and Linda says, love this. Our next micro practice, and this is one I made up because it's something that if you worked with me, you would. I feel like my team would probably say this is a quote of mine, maybe, but I'll say I just took a brain break, and so I call brain breaks different things, but I feel like that you guys probably have brain breaks too. So for me, brain breaks are essentially a micro practice. I usually do them in under like 5 minutes. But I work in a screened-in porch for most of the time until it gets too hot, and then I don't work on the screened-in porch anymore. I'm back inside. But on the days that I'm on the screened-in porch, I usually will at some point for about 5 minutes close my eyes on the porch, and I'll just listen to the birds. And I think about just the sounds that I'm hearing and the temperature that I'm feeling. And anything else that I'm noticing. I don't let other things come into my brain except for what's kind of around me. And so that's like a 5-minute brain break. It's easy to do, and it's especially easy if you're in nature. Another brain break might be that I pick up something like, let's see, this is an example. Oh, you can't even see it. Okay, there you go. It's just a flower. It's an example of a brain break. I just stop and I disconnect and I do some art for a couple minutes and then I go back to what I'm doing. But the brain break is really helpful because it allows me to cope with any stressors that I'm feeling, but then also gives me a little bit of a creative outlet too. And so now I want to ask you, what are your brain breaks? What do you have them? I know for me, implementing the brain breaks are really beneficial, and they make a big difference in my life and my day to day. And there's they're so easy to do, and I just usually have things around me that I can kind of do if I just need to take a break from something. I also think, sometimes we can scroll unnecessarily, but sometimes looking up kitten videos or puppy videos or funny videos can definitely be a brain break too. Music, brain break. Um, so Shelley says 1 or 2 games of online Scrabble. Absolutely. David says coffee. Yeah, I definitely have a lot of, I have coffee right now, but coffee is kind of a brain break for me too. I'll go and I'll just do the act of making the coffee and getting it ready and enjoying it gives me a couple minutes away from. Linda says walking my dog or also listening to the birds. And then Katrina says, just remember doing a puzzle even for a few minutes, nature also. And then Kenita says, I just say listen. So thinking about implementing these brain breaks, they can be small, little things that you can do in your day, and they can actually help you to kind of reset a little bit. I know anytime I take a little brain break, it is helpful for me. I just make sure that it doesn't take over what I'm doing. So usually I have other things that I need to do. We have Mandy that says, I take a 10 to 15 minute grounding break during my work days and go outside and touch grass. That is an amazing thing to do. And then Katie says, sitting with my eyes closed for a few minutes. That is a wonderful brain break. So you guys can keep, oh, Katrina says Wordle. That's a good one as well. So we're going to move on to our next slide, but keep adding in as you're thinking of stuff. So I like to add this slide in because I think it's a good summary sometimes of stress, because stress is going to be here all the time. So, and we don't have a lot of control always in stress, but we do have control over ourselves. So, I've talked a little bit about closing the stress cycle, but stress is going to be there. So we can avoid unnecessary stress. We can say, no to objects and situations that prevent you from doing what you need to do, or you can organize and manage your tasks. Avoiding unnecessary stress, you can, I always say I tried not to be late because being late might put me into some other circumstances like a traffic or whatever. And so I try to do things that I can avoid stress when possible. And then altering the situation. So say that I'm going to give you just a simple example, but say that you were going somewhere and then all of a sudden you were in really bad traffic and you were going to be late. How can you alter the situation? Could you maybe go a different route? Could you, if you're in stop traffic, you can make a phone call, but don't talk and text and drive and stuff. But if you're in stop traffic and you had the right equipment, you could, communicate your frustrations. This is a little funny piece of advice, but someone told me one time, if you're ever mad at the traffic, just remember you're the traffic, you're a part of the traffic. But you could also alter it by going a different route, trying a different way. But you also could listen to music and just make it, adjust, kind of to the experience, make it a positive thing for you. And then reminding yourself that it's okay to be late. It's just okay to be late sometimes. We can adapt to the stressor. So adjust your standards, look at the issue, and then look at the big picture. Or you can accept the unchangeable. So allowing yourself to, say, okay, this is a stressful situation. There's nothing I can do about it, but, be in this moment. And I think that is really, really important. So we have Eric that says, listen to a piece of music, not as a background. That is so important. Yeah, just listen to music. So don't have it on as a background piece, like it's something that you can intentionally do. Jane says, watch a sunset, look at the clouds. We have nature, and that's so good and so helpful for us. And we have a lot of beautiful things around us. I've been reading a book from Anne Lamott, and I'm not far into it, but she talks a little bit about love. And she says, love is trees, love is the blue sky, love is the, the things that are around us that we can see, and you can allow yourself to see those things, which is beautiful. And then Jane asked if we could have a list of self-affirmations. What I would love to do, Jane, is that I will see if I can get an email sent out to everybody that has a list of affirmations. I used to do this in therapy. We would talk about things like affirmations, and then I would just send a list of things. So I'll send a list, and then know that you can build from that list and customize what type of affirmations that you need. So we're going to move on to our next slide. What is one way that you could close out the stress of the day? So while we're talking about this, I'm going to answer the question from Shelley that was earlier in the presentation. Shelley wanted to know, how do I tease out the difference between physical fatigue, inertia, and some depression? It is hard because all those things can look similar and can be kind of like a little bit difficult to so depression is going to have fatigue sometimes, and there's going to be cognitive fatigue sometimes and physical fatigue. And so what I usually recommend is either journaling or giving yourself a dedicated span of time where you document symptoms that you're experiencing and what your day has been like, what your sleep has been like. Because sometimes fatigue can be related to I get incredible fatigue when I have really bad allergies, but I also have fatigue anyways. And so knowing the difference between those two different types of fatigue are important. It's important to talk with your doctor if you're experiencing fatigue, because it could be related somewhat to depression. It could be related to your MS. It could be related to both. So I encourage you to kind of track what your life is like, so journal, like how many hours did you sleep? What's your how has your eating been? How has your mood been? How has your energy level been? And maybe seeing by that, and did you do any exercise or movement, or what your stressors are? So when you see that, you can kind of start to see some correlations. But I'm going to go back to what is the way that you can close out the stress of the day. Okay, so Jane said, thank you for being so helpful. You're welcome. Joe said, bird feeders help my house's stress level. Yeah, it is so true. Bird feeders are great. So thinking about things that you can do, and I want you to think of, even we don't have to list it here right now, but think of what is something that you can do that would help you maybe close out the stress of the day. And so I can show you possibly if he'll come out. Yeah. He's been super good for me. So one of the things that I have been doing, so this is Charlie, and Charlie is helping me with the stress, like releasing the stress of the day, because he's playful and he's been very sweet, and so we've been going outside and throwing a ball and playing, and so that's a different release for me, and that I in terms of closing out the stress cycle that I haven't had before. But that's something that's been helpful. But what is something in your life that you can do that can help you close out the stress of the day? Because the stress is going to be there. And then we'll move on to our next slide. And I want to remind you, and this is an important thing for me, often we journey through life and we think that we're alone in our thoughts and our experiences and our feelings. And we may have unique thoughts, experiences, and feelings. But the truth is that you're not alone. And I think that's important to know. And we have, like a lot of people that participate in the chat, and we have a lot of people that just listen. And I know at hard times, people often can just feel like they might be alone. And I just want to remind you that you are not alone and you're a part of this group. So we're going to thank Viatris and MS Views and News, because without either of them, this program would not be here. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll move on. And so this, I will not change this slide at all ever. I'm not saying goodbye, but I'm saying see you later. And so know that I will be here next month. I'm looking forward to seeing you. We are a part of a community, and let's live as well together as we can with MS. Take care.